Everyone,
Hi.
welcome to our talk. We are here to show you why Grafana Alerting is ready to be your single alerting engine and how easy it is to get started. I'm Sonia Aguilar, and I'm one of the software engineers here at Grafana Labs.
And I'm Alexander. I am also a software engineer at Grafana Labs. And when Matt asked you how many of you have been woken up by alerting, I'm glad I was backstage and I didn't see that. So here's what we have for you today. We're going to start with a quick recap of how Grafana Alerting got to where it's now, what challenges we had to solve to make it better, how to bring your existing alerts into Grafana from another system, understand what's happening with them, whether notifications went out or not, and we also have some live demos.
Let's start with a quick recap. When Grafana started, everything was about dashboards and visualizations. Alerting was living in external systems like Prometheus. Then, with Grafana 4, we created our first alerting engine. It was basic, one-dimensional, and focused on graphite. Over time, Prometheus, Mimir, and Loki became popular, and we built the unified alerting, where you could manage alert rules from different systems in a single place. And we also added the ability to create multidimensional alerts. But over time, we realized that having two types of alerts, Grafana managed alerts, data source managed alerts, was adding complexity and sometimes confusion for users. And this is what was happening internally in Grafana. We were using Prometheus, Mimir, Loki, each with their own alerting system, a bit of everything. But at the same time, teams like security were adopting Grafana Alerting. And more users were asking us, which system should I use? And the problem was that having two options was adding more confusion than clarity. And this confusion told us we needed to make a decision. And we did it. We decided to double down on Grafana Alerting. And the result is an alerting system that has the best of these systems. Grafana Alerting is now a mature, scalable, and fully featured alerting engine. Has everything you could expect from Prometheus and more. And we can call it alerting in the Big Ten, because you can query from almost any data source you need, and you can notify through most of the integrations you need. And we can call it the Big Ten because we have over 50 different data sources and 22 types of integrations and counting. But to get here, first, we have to solve some big challenges, and Alexander will show you how.
One of the challenges we had to solve is scaling, because Grafana Alerting runs everywhere from small teams with just a few roles to large organizations with thousands of alerts. And as Sonia mentioned, we use it internally too. So we've seen what happens when things grow. And there are really two sides to it. First, your system gets bigger. You have more alert rules and increased load on your database and data sources. But also your organization gets bigger. You have more teams. Each team needs their own space. And it also gets harder to understand what's happening across hundreds of rules and notification policies. So let's start with the system side. Imagine you have one single Grafana instance. It runs your alerting, queries data sources like Mimir, Tempo, and Loki, and others, and writes alert state to the database. It's simple and easy to manage, but if it goes down, your alerting goes down with it. So what do? Well, you panic, of course, but then you add a second Grafana. Now you have two instances running in high availability mode. If one fails, the other keeps evaluating, so you've got redundancy. But it also means that both of them evaluate all alert rules independently. So your data source cluster and your database are getting hit twice for the exact same rules. And it all compounds. If you start 5 Grafanas, you'll get 5 times the load. And Grafana needs to save alert state after each evaluation, so that's often where we feel the pain first. There are a few things that Grafana can do already to reduce the database pressure. For example, compressed state, when instead of saving every single alert instance to the database independently, it can compress the state of the whole rule and save it to the database at once, reducing the number of queries it needs to make. And evaluation jitter, without which Grafana runs all alert rules on the same interval at once, and that creates a thundering herd that slams your database and data sources. So instead, it can calculate a deterministic offset and spread rule evaluations evenly across the interval. And the third thing it can do is periodic saves. I mentioned that Grafana saves alert state to the database after each evaluation, but it can also buffer the state in memory and flush to the database periodically, let's say every 5 minutes. Of course, there is a trade-off. If Grafana crashes during those 5 minutes, you lose unsafe transitions, and they recover on next evaluation. So all these options, they help with database pressure, but they don't fix the fundamental issue, that every replica is still doing all the work. And that's what they fixed in Grafana 13. Now you can have one replica evaluate alert rules while the others stand by. Your data source and database load stay the same, no matter how many replicas you run. And it uses the same cluster membership that Grafana's Alert Manager already has. So it decides which replica is the primary, and if it goes down, another one takes over automatically. During this failover process, there is a brief gap in rule evaluations. So before enabling this new mode, you need to pick what matters to you more: zero gap redundancy or constant load on your database and data sources. But if you already use high availability in production, you can enable this new mode with just one single config flag. It's available in Grafana 13, as I mentioned, and it's open source. But I also said in the beginning that scaling isn't just about load. It's also about handling more teams as your organization grows. And for that, we've had role-based access control for a while now. Teams can own roles in folders with fine-grained control over who can change their alerting. And contact points have access control too. But one piece was missing: notification policies. The routing tree that decides where notifications go when something fires or resolves. Up until now. But when everyone shares a single policy tree, it's a problem because at scale it becomes this like a giant tree, which is a nightmare to manage when different teams change the same config. And there's always a risk of breaking someone else's routing by accident. And I really like this image. It was generated by AI, but I think it represents a complicated notification policy tree really well, because you see there are different shapes, different colors. Nobody really knows why, but it looks important, and I can't really delete it. So we fixed that as well. And now you can have multiple notification policy trees when each team gets their own routing, small config, and they can change it however they want. So changes to one tree don't affect anyone else. You can't break someone else's alerting by accident. And that's how Grafana now scales with both your infrastructure and your teams. But what if you want to move your existing alerting from another system like Mimir, Loki, or some other system to Grafana? What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about how we get started into Grafana Alerting. Because there are two ways to get started. One is creating alert rules from scratch, and for this you can use the UI, or you can use provisioning, file provisioning, API provisioning, or Terraform. Or if you are already running your alerting system in Prometheus, Mimir, or Loki, and you want to onboard into Grafana Alerting, we have built an import tool that lets you bring your alerting system directly into Grafana. If you prefer creating all rules from scratch using the UI, in GrafanaCon last year, we already showed you how we made it easier than ever, because we simplified the way you define the query and condition. And we also simplified the way you define how an alert rule is going to be routed with the simplified routing. That is, being able to select the contact point in the alert rule form. But let's talk about the new import tool, because we have built a Prometheus compatibility layer directly into Grafana. This means that now you can import your alert rules and your alert manager configuration into Grafana Alerting. With this import tool, you don't need to copy-paste anything. You don't need to rewrite expressions. Your alerts will work in Grafana. But how does this work? Do you remember the multi-policy tree feature that Alexander showed us? This is where this feature becomes crucial. Because when we are importing from Prometheus, Mimir, and Loki, we are creating a new policy tree in Grafana with the imported policies. And we assign this policy tree to each imported alert rule. And your existing policies in Grafana stay untouched. There are two ways to import. One is using the API, and the other is using the UI. Let's talk about the API, because maybe you have everything in CI/CD, or maybe you have lots of data sources to import. In this case, your best option is using the API. This API is fully compatible with Mimir tool and Cortex tool. This means that you can continue using the same workflows, same commands. You only need to target to the new import endpoint, and your alerting system will be automatically imported into Grafana. But maybe you prefer a guided experience and you don't have lots of data sources to import. In this case, we have built a new wizard in the UI, and it's a good option for you. Let's go to the demo. Let's switch to the demo. OK. So we are here in the alert list view. And here in this menu, we have a new menu item, Import to Grafana Alerting. Let's click on it. This is the new import wizard. As you can see on the left is a basic three-step process. And the order in this wizard is intentional, because first we need to import notification resources. The first thing we have to do is to decide the import source. Where is this alert manager stored? You can use YAML file or use a data source. In my case, I want to import the alert manager that lives in a data source, in particular this one. Let's select this one. Then you need to decide a name for the new policy tree that is going to be created in Grafana with the imported policies. The UI is automatically using the same name as the data source we decided here. You can edit, of course, but I'm going to go ahead with this name. And the UI is also doing some validation. It's checking if there is any conflict. For example, let's imagine if we want to import a contact point with a name that already exists in Grafana. In this case, we do some deduplication and we rename these imported resources. Let's go to the next step. This step is about importing our rules. And the first thing we have to decide is which policy tree we want to use for these imported rules. The UI is automatically selecting the policy tree name that we decided in the previous step. You can select another one, but I'm going to go ahead with this one. Then you have to decide the import source. Where are these alert rules stored? You can use a YAML file or a data source. In my case, I want to import all the alert rules that live in this data source, so I'm going to select this one. You can also filter by namespace and group, but in my case, I want to import all the alert rules that live in this data source, so I'm not going to use any filter here. Then you need to select the target folder in Grafana. This will be the folder where all the imported rules are going to be created. I'm going to select this one. And then in here, you can see 2 checks that are enabled by default. This is very important because it means that all the imported rules, once they are imported, are going to stay paused. This means that they are not going to start being evaluated yet. This gives you some time to review that everything looks correct in Grafana. And once you see that everything is correct, is the moment you can unpause them. Let's go to the last step. And last step is about reviewing that everything that you want to import is correct. You can review notification resources, in this case, the alert manager that we want to import. And you can review also, in this case, the 10 rules that we are going to import. All right. So we are ready. Let's click the button, start importing, and confirm. And we are done. The UI has redirected us to the alert list view with this filter namespace by the target folder that we decided during the import. So we can see here all the imported rules that now all of them are Grafana managed rules. And all of them are paused. Now, let's imagine that everything looks fine. We can come here to the folder level, and we have this new feature, these free bulk actions. The interesting one for us is the second one, resume all rules. That means that all the rules that are in this folder are going to be unpaused. But let's take a look to one of these imported rules. We can see the query, expressions. But the interesting part here is in the configure notifications section, because now we have a new setting, the policy tree selector. And you can see that we have this alerting demo alert manager selected. All our imported rules are going to have this setting. So all of them are going to follow the logic in this policy tree. Let's take a look to the policies view. Because now, this policies view is not a policy tree view. It's a list of policy trees. And the first one is the original one, the Grafana default policy, the one that all the existing Grafana rules are following for the routing. And the second one is the new policy tree, the one that was created during the import with the imported policies. And the good thing of this multi-policy tree feature is that this is not only for import. Now, any team can come here, click this button, and create their independent policy tree without breaking someone else's routing. And now that we see that everything has been imported, because we can see here at the contact points page some contact points imported, I would like to know how these imported alert rules are behaving. What do you think, Alex?
Let's take a look. So we have a new page in Grafana called Alert Activity. And during the scaling part, I talked that when your organization gets bigger, you have more alert rules, and it gets harder to understand what's happening. And that's where Alert Activity helps you. So you see here alert rules that fired in the last 15 minutes. With the list of alert rules, and to the right, you see the chart. That's the alert volume over time. So here you can see that you can spot patterns, for example, when a few alerts started firing at the same time, or if there are spikes, you will see it here. Of course, you can filter by state or any label if you need, or regroup them. For example, if I want to see alerting team alerts, I can filter by team name and just see my team's alerts. But let's also take a look at one of the alerts, like service health alert. You see that it's flapping all the time. So we can click on instance details, and it opens the detailed view of this specific alert instance. At the top, that's the query, the actual query that Grafana runs to evaluate the alert rule. And below that is history. And what's interesting about the history timeline is that it combines in itself both state transitions, like alert went from alerting to normal, and also notifications. So you can see that it sent a resolved notification to Grafana on-call contact point, and it was successfully delivered. Same thing with fired notification a few minutes earlier. And if Grafana failed to send notification, you would also see an error here. You can silence the alert or declare an incident if you'd like. But what if you want to see all notifications that Grafana sent? So if you click on the contact point itself, there's a new button called History, and it opens the notification history of this specific contact point. So you can see all alerts that Grafana sent. And if we remove the filter, then we'll see all notifications that Grafana sent across all the alerting. You can filter by status or by outcome. And you can also expand any of this to see what exactly was sent, if you're firing alerts. And as I mentioned, if Grafana failed to send a notification, you also see an error here, so you don't need to guess, was it delivered or not, and why. This new page lives next to the state history that shows same state transitions over time, even if it didn't send any notification. And in our system, there are lots of alerts, so we can even analyze them with the assistant if we like. And what it actually is doing right now is it's getting all the same alerts that we have on this page in the last hour. And it collects information about them because it knows more about our system. And you can see also we have some prompt here that asks it to analyze patterns, spot any issues, and insights. So let's see what it says as. And it's using all the data that you actually see on the page. So it might take a few seconds, but here we are. Yeah. So you can see that we already have some alerts that require immediate attention. So it's suggested to take a look at a few of them in the same namespace. And there are some even patterns, so it analyzes everything that alerting has. And even suggests us what our investigation priority should be, so we can make a decision what to do next. And that's the workflow that we built in Grafana 13, so that you can import your existing alerting, you can understand what's happening in the system, see whether notifications went out or not, and if needed, ask Assistant to help you to understand what to do next. And that's the end of our demo. Can we go back to the slides, please?
We hope that after seeing everything today, you are convinced to switch to Grafana Alerting. Either it's the import tool, the multi-policy tree, or the new triage features. We've been working hard to make Grafana Alerting the only alerting system you will ever need. Thank you.
Thank you.